How's it going, everyone? This is the Cajun Gaming Guild, Little Giant here, and today we're going to continue our little game that we're making in Scratch called Dark Ages Defense. Today we're going to cover a few things that are going to do with the spawning of the monsters. Right? And also a few little things that I found. I found a little bit of an exploit. I'll tell you guys all about it. It took me quite a while to figure out how to fix it, and it was the simplest fix in the world. I just didn't think of it. And once I figured it out, I was like, face palm for sure. But anyways, I'm going to show you what we have up to now. Basically, what I did, there's this guy called Fuel Elvin, something like that. I think that's his name. He made this tower defense game in Scratch. He has 8 episodes on YouTube. I don't even know how many views. It's crazy. It's a really, really good video. It taught me a ton about tower defense games and the radiuses and distances and pathing and a whole bunch of good stuff. Really, really, really good guy to watch if you're ever interested in checking him out. I would definitely suggest you do that, and I will probably put his link in the uh, description below. So I got this idea from him, but the thing is I needed it to take it a little bit further for this game here, because I want animated creatures that are going to walk up the path. And in order to do that, I had to take what he did a little bit further, and I figured it out. It only took me a little while to figure out, but you will see that finished product today. So, if you watch his video, you're going to see he makes an enemy that looks very similar to this, where you have 2 hitboxes, and the 2 hitboxes, so the circle's in the center here, and the hitbox on the right is on the right hand side of, if you, let's say the ball was facing to the right here, on the right hand side, that would be the right arm, and this would be the left arm. Okay, I know maybe you're not sure what I mean by that. And basically, what happens is as your graphic moves down this track, okay, it would act like a uni rail, all right? Like a rail in the middle, and the 2 arms are going to be on each side of the rail. And anytime one of the arms hits the rail, based on what costume it is, okay, is going to make the ball or the picture turn left or right the whole entire way, and it'll just follow this path. And anytime that that arm hits the side, it will continually turn your graphic until it reaches the end of its path, where I have set up code that when it hits this specific, it's called a, I think I called it a gate sprite. Okay, once it hits this gate sprite, it just it loses all its hit points, it takes health away from your castle, and disappears. Okay, it deletes the clone. So that's that in a nutshell. Um, the spawn code I will explain to you guys later. Okay, but I did set that up in with my timer. Okay, so I'm just going to show you what it does right now. So on start day, the timer is going to tick down. You'll be able to start collecting your resources, start hiring new people. I don't have that implemented yet, but it's coming probably in the next video. Buy some towers, etc., etc. As the time ticks down, so I have this set up just to show you, 2, 1, it's going to spawn. And you're going to see the little red dots are going to spawn. And I have that set up into code for so many every day, and it'll keep increasing. I have it going up by like a random factor. All right, a minimum of so much and a maximum of so many creatures. So it's going to be different every time you play the game. All right, so you'll have 4 creatures. They're going to walk up the path, and any towers will be able to hit them. If they don't get hit or die, as soon as they hit the gate, you'll see that they're going to disappear. Well, first off, I don't want these little red dots. In that tower defense game, you're going to see that's what he uses. It's awesome for his game, but if you don't know how to take it to the next level and to put your own graphics in that actually animate, etc., etc., you're going to have a bunch of red dots. Okay, and maybe that's okay with you, but for me, it's not okay. I want graphics that move. I want graphics that look good. Even though this is not really going to be a game that I'm going to market or anything, I still want the option to do so if I want. All right. So what I did was I went into Scratch Library and I found this graphic of Avery walking. It's in the library. If you go here and look, she's right here. Okay. And she's animated already. So it took all the work away. I didn't have to do that part. And all I did was bring her into the code here. And I separated it right now so you wouldn't see her. I also changed the ghost effect to this. So what's going to happen is Avery is going to go to, and I'd love to say she's going to go to the red ball and follow it. And it would work perfectly if there was only one red ball. But as soon as you make clones, unfortunately, as soon as you start to make clones into your project, well, it doesn't know how to go to a specific clone. That does not work, all right? There is no such thing as a go-to clone, all right? And there's any sprite here you can go to for sure, and Avery is one of those sprites. Avery walking, see? But it doesn't go to Avery Walking's clones, or it doesn't go to the enemy's clones, or it doesn't go to any clones at all. So in order to figure that out, all I did was create a list, okay? And I will show you that as we go. But for now, I want to show you what this looks like. So I'm going to set the clone effect for my red balls because I don't want you to see those. I want those to be invisible to your eye. And all I want you to see is Avery walking. And also, I have Avery walking, pointing in the direction, left, right style. So as she's walking towards this way, all right, she's checking out the direction from another list that I created that I will show you guys in a little bit. And as she walks around this corner and the graphic turns completely around, the ball does, and the direction changes on the ball, well, Avery is going to point in the same direction that ball is pointing in based on the code that I put in to my game, okay? And Avery will actually switch directions and start walking the other way. All right. So that's the code I'm going to use for my creatures. I'm going to have top-down animals of some type. And these animals are going to walk and they're going to be on not on a left-right style. They'll be on an all-around style. So that means as they change direction at all, even if they're going a little bit diagonal, the creature will look like he's going diagonally. And he'll follow the path. He should follow it pretty good. So anyhow, enough of that. I'm going to show you what I did. So we'll set this timer down so that it starts to spawn my creatures, my Averys. Oh, making me out to be a liar. Ha 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 ha. Hold on a second, yeah. It's because I just hooked it up and I didn't hit the green flag. That was my fault. There we go. There's Avery walking. And you can see all four of those balls are still there, but you can't see them now. And all they are doing is keeping my Averys on track so that they follow this path flawlessly. Now my Averys are a little bit big and they're not perfectly centered, but that would be up to me to offset where I want her to be. It's not hard to fix. All right. And as Avery gets there, they also have to disappear. All right. At the end of the last one, you'll notice all my bars disappeared. My start day is done and I'm finished. So before I get into the code, I want to explain to you this exploit that I found. So on the start day, you're allowed to click on your bushes and find and collect your stuff. But because these are clones, all right, because these bars are clones, well, what was happening was when the last Avery was dead, or the last creature was dead, everything was shut down. But if you were holding your button down while everything shut down, you could hold it there for another 25 seconds. You could hold it there for 5 more minutes if you wanted. The bar in the background was not moving. The time was not moving. Nothing was moving at all. But it was some deep down into the sprite, inside of the sprite itself, like the variable is for this sprite only, and that you can't see. You can't see that change in the variable. So I didn't realize that it was actually still happening. So when I hit my next day, I'd have like 5 food instead of 3. It was still building up, even though the bar would still be weirdly the same. And like, anyhow, there was a major exploit and I couldn't stop it whatsoever. There was nothing I could do to stop it until I found out what it was. And it was the stupidest. I mean, so easy, it was crazy. All I ended up having to do was to just delete the clone. I hide it anyway, and when it creates the clone again the next day, everything works just fine. So all I had to do was delete the clone, and then that variable that was stuck to the clone could no longer go up in value. All right, so that was my fix. All right, so now we're going to go into the code of the road. So again, this road here, the road middle, all right, that's the black line. I do not want to see that, okay? I have it set so that you can see it to see what I meant, but I'm going to also set that to invisible. So now they're still going to follow the path because it's still there. It's just to the naked eye, you cannot see it anymore, all right? So that's the code. Basically, just go to a specific position. It's basically the exact same position as the yellow line, and all I did was take the costume down to 4 lines instead of 60 or whatever the giant road was. And it's the same exact pattern, so it worked out easy. It was easy. All right. Okay, so this is the enemy sprite, and now I'm going to go over the code with you guys. So when the green flag is clicked, I want you to set the size of the ball to 20%, and that's based off the size that I made it. You can just make it smaller yourself if you want, but I just set it this way. That way there's no problems down the road. And if I ever want to change it at this point, I just change this number. Then it sets the updater to 0, clone checker to no, pause check to 0, okay? And so basically, I'm going to go over these with you, what they do. These are variables that I have set up. And I also have this set clones number to 0. All right. So actually, I'm just going to move this set clones up to here. It doesn't really matter where you put it as long as it happens before a certain point. All right. So this is what this means. Updater is a way for me to update the number of the clone. Okay, the clone number, each clone that you create has to have its distinct number in order for you to be able to figure out which one to target later on. So if you want to click on a clone, and there's 5 clones here, whichever one you're clicking on, it has to know which one you're clicking on. Is it 1? Is it 2? Is it 3? Is it 4? Is it 5? Okay, and the way I've created my clones are, it's going to create up to 20, and then it'll reset, and you can change this number to whatever number you want. But for me, I don't think I'm going to have too many more than 20 at any one time, but if I do, I'll just increase this number. And so how it works is at the start of the game, the first one is going to be set to 0. All right, but it doesn't actually create a clone until it actually goes up 1. All right, and that happens here. I'll get to that in a moment. So the updater and the set clones number work together as one unit. Why I do it like that is, well, when I start a new day, okay, let's say, or if I want to pause function, I have to be able to start my clones off back where I was at before I pause the game, not back over to 0, if that makes any sense to you. Because if I start over at 0 again and I have 2 clones number 1, well, what's going to happen? When you click on one, the other one's also going to be affected. We don't want that to happen. So you have to do it a certain way, and this is how I figured out how to do it, and it works just fine. Set clone checker to no is originally your graphic. If I click on it, you'll see it's right here. Okay, it's shining here when it flashes. You can see it right here. That's the original picture of this circle is there. What's happening is when you start your clones, that will stay there permanently. That's not ever going to move because that's the original picture of your enemy, okay? Meaning it is not a clone. It's checking to see if that's a clone. If it's a clone, then it should say yes, all right, not no. So at the start of your game, because this is not a clone, you want to set it to no. So that means this is going to be no. The pause check is just whether or not the day has started. I explained that in another video. So this is how we're going to be able to figure out if the day is started and we're able to click on things, etc., etc. It's going to set it to 0, meaning it's not paused. But if it's at 1, then it will be paused. Okay. Then I want you to just hide. I want this graphic to be here because it has to be somewhere as a starting point for my stuff. But I just want it to hide forever. I never want to see that picture ever again. All I want to see is the clones that it creates. Then I have delete all of clone X, all of clone Y, all of distance, and all of direction. Those are lists that I've created, and they're all right here. I will put them on the screen so you see what they are. Okay? They're all lists, as you can see. Okay? So, clone X, what I have that set up to be is, and I'll show you here in my code, as your guy's moving around, okay, his X and Y position, which are right here, are going to constantly change. As he moves forward, he's going to change. He's going to take a step. Every time that this loop happens, it's going to move one step. And this X position and Y position is going to constantly be changing. So what I've done is I have replaced the clone number. So if this is clone number 1, okay, it's going to look at the first thing in all of these lists, the number 1 position, because we're talking about the first clone, which is position number 1. Okay, you'll see that they're all empty, and the reason why they're all empty is that in order for them to start filling up, the spawning has to happen. Okay, once the spawning happens, you'll see that it starts to add empty things to all 3 of these, and they start to fill up based on how many clones that you have. So if only 4 clones happen, there's only going to be 4 of these filled up. All right. Now I see that my distance is 20. That's because I have it set up at the start, right up here, to repeat 20 times and just add 20 to distance. This is not even being used right now in my game. I could just take it right out. Okay, I have no use for this right now, and I'm just going to hide this. Okay, it will be something that I will probably use later. Okay, because what you want is you want your tower to target, let's say, the strongest, the one with the most hit points. That's going to be one way. The last person in line, the first person in line, and the way to do that is to figure out the distance. But I haven't gotten that far in my code yet. I do know how to do it. I just haven't done it yet. So I'm just going to take it off my code so it doesn't confuse you guys any more than I have to confuse you. Next, when I receive spawn. So when this timer over here ticks down, and I'm just going to put all these lists, I want you to see them because I'll just move it over just a bit so you can see my counter, but I also want you to see the castle. Okay, so I'll try and put it somewhere here. I want you to be able to see the creatures moving, etc., etc. So when the timer gets to 0, it's going to receive spawn. Okay, I'm going to get back to this in 1 second. I'm going to show you my spawn code. Okay, so the timer code, once it gets down to 0, 0, 0, 0, it's going to broadcast start spawn. Okay, it's going to wait 20 seconds. Then it's going to change days by 1, and then it's going to stop the script. All right. Why is it waiting 20 seconds? It could wait another 5 minutes if you want. All right. But there's no point in doing that. All right. There's just absolutely no point in doing that. So, and changing the days to 1, I'm going to have to move that because I don't want it to change after 20 seconds. And I'll explain that in another video. So once it does start spawn, we're going to go to the timer code, the spawn code. So when I receive start spawn, if days are under 4 days, so if as long as my days are under 4 days, I'm going to increase and decrease this because to increase difficulty, etc. This is how I'm doing it. So as long as the days are under 4 days, I want you to set the spawn amount, so how many creatures I want to spawn, to how many days we're at right now. So if it's day 1 times 3 is 3. Plus, pick a random number from 1 to how many days that we have. So on the first day, it's going to be 4 every single time. That will never change because 1 times 3 is 3, plus 1, because it can only be from 1 to 1, is 4. Okay, and that's the reason why I put wait 20 seconds, because I wanted it to stay at least on the day that it is right now to calculate this before it changed over to the next day. All right. So then what I wanted to do after it has figured out the number for the amount that it's going to spawn. So on the second day, it can definitely differ. It's going to be 2 times 3 is 6, plus a random number between 1 and 2. So it could be 7 or 8 creatures that spawn. On the third day, it's going to be 9 plus 1, 2, or 3, right? So that's the difference. It'll always be a little different each time you play. It's not a huge difference, but it's going to be different, okay? Then from day 4 on, maybe day 4, 5, and 6, I'm going to have a different code set up here where it might be more creatures, or I might have, instead of Averys, let's say, I'm going to have a different type of creature with more hit points, faster creatures, whatever, right? That's all up to you. And that's how I'm going to arrange it. So right now, it's going to repeat the first round it would repeat 4 times because that's how many spawn amount that I would do. So for each spawn creature, it's going to repeat that many times. It's going to wait 1 second and it's going to broadcast spawn. It's just going to broadcast it out into the world somewhere. Okay? Okay, so when I receive start spawn here, this one says wait the spawn amount plus 1 second. Okay, so it has to wait at least 5 seconds on the first round. Why? Is because I only want it to start after everything has been spawned. Okay, because if you don't do that and everything gets killed because you have a tower that can reach, let's just say, I'm not going to have that, but I'm just giving you an example of why I'm doing that. Then I wanted to wait at least until all the creatures have spawned. Then I needed to wait until the amount of creatures spawned are dead. Okay. So right now it's 4. I need that spawn amount to get down to 0. Okay. Once that happens, then I want you to broadcast next day. And when that broadcast of next day is put out there, that's what's going to shut down all of my clickables so that they cannot no longer be clicked on, where my bars are going to be invisible, so you can no longer do anything but look at stuff anymore until you click this next button. And then it's going to set the day start to 0. All right, meaning everything's going to be shut down until you click the button for the second day, for instance. Okay? Where does this get changed? It gets changed on my enemy code. So that is, in a nutshell, how I do my spawning, okay, for everything. This code up here, hide everything, is only going to be implemented once I put a game over screen. But you'll notice I will have that in every single piece of code at the end because my game over screen is going to shut down everything. Okay, so now let's go back to the code here so I can continue explaining what happens next. So it's going to be spawning. So every time that it repeated the amount of spawn in the previous code here, every time it repeated, it's going to broadcast a spawn. And when it does, it's going to do this each and every time. So it's going to change the updater by 1. So again, we started at 0. So the very first time it's going to be 1. All right. And then it's going to set the clone's number to 1. All right. Else, if the updater is bigger than 20, so if it ever gets to 21, I want it to reset back down to 1 again. All right, and then change clones back to number 1. By that point, the first clone that was called number 1 will be dead at that point. All right, because I'm not going to have it too ridiculously like every split second. They're not going to spawn. It's going to be like every second or every half second or whatever. So, and if I need to, I'll just increase it to 30. It's not a big deal. All right. So now, once that happens and it sets the clone number for the clone that we're going to create here in a second, then it's going to check to see if what we're talking about is actually a clone. Nope, it's not, because it's the original picture so far. Then we're going to add a blank spot to clone X, a blank spot to clone Y, and a blank spot to direction. We're going to go to the location I need it to be, which is roughly here, and point in the direction facing to the right, meaning I want my arms to be pointing this way. All right, the 2 arms on my graphic here that I showed you earlier in the costumes. Then I wanted to just create one clone of myself. There's no forever loop, there's no repeat, just one clone. That's all I wanted to do. Okay. Then when I start as a clone, okay, it's going to happen twice because I needed to make two different forever loops. I had to do them two separate ways because on the bottom of a forever loop, you cannot attach anything to it. So I needed to do it two separate places. So when I start as a clone, I'm just going to move this up right quickly, sorry. And just so I can explain, I'm going to explain the bottom one first, okay? It's going to set the clone checker to yes. So now I'm telling this specific clone that it is a clone. Yes, you are a clone, all right? And I'm going to set the enemy destroyed to 0. So that means if my enemy destroyed is anything but 0, it's good. He'll be able to continue moving along as normal, all right? Then I also want to set my enemy HP to 3. Right at the moment, that's all I have it set up as, okay? And for each creature that you want to make, you're going to have to set this up a little differently. So if you have creatures with heavier hit points, right, you can make your own blocks. There's different ways of doing this. All I'm doing is showing you the first way I've done it with the first creature. This is probably going to change as I progress through the making of this game. Then, forever, once you set all these initial things in that specific clone of clone ID 1, let's say, if the pause check is 0, so that means it cannot be paused. If the game is paused, none of this is going to happen. But if the game is not paused, it can continue. And as long as this is a clone and not the original sprite, then we can do all this. All right. So if it's not touching the gate sprite, so as long as it's not touching this end gate sprite right here, as long as it's not touching that, then you can continue to work. Okay, so what's going to happen right away is it's going to start replacing the numbers in the very first slot because clone number 1 is the first one. It's going to start replacing that number with the rounded X position and the rounded Y position. Instead of decimal points, I just made it rounded so it would round up or down so that it would take all the decimal points away. Okay, and it would do that every single time it loops forever. It's going to continually replace this number as your dude moves around the track, okay? Then it's going to go to the front layer. It's going to move one step forward, okay? It's going to switch to costume 2, which is the left arm. It's going to change here so fast you will not even see it happen, if you could see it at all, because it is ghosted, don't forget. Then it's going to, if it's touching the road in the middle, that little black line that's hidden, then I want you to turn the opposite direction 15 degrees. Then quickly it's going to change to the other arm, the right arm. If that arm is touching the middle, I want you to turn the opposite 15 degrees, which is going to keep your ball moving along this little black line that's hidden all the way to the end. That's the code for that. So next we have replace item clones of direction with direction. So what this is doing is it's going to replace whatever clone we're talking about. So this is clone 1, okay? It's going to replace the very first one with the direction of clone 1 at the current time. So as it goes down the path, it's probably going to be 90 for a little ways. Then as it starts to go up around here, it'll start to turn, which will change the direction. And it will constantly update in here. Even though you will not see the update in the very first ones, I'm not exactly sure why it does that, but it is still updating because clones, sometimes you do not see the information that clones are updating to. After that, it's going to switch the costume to costume 4, which is the ball, okay? And then it's going to show itself. Why is it important to show, I wonder? Well, it's like this. If you do not show, then your arms as well as your ball are not even there. And so therefore there's nothing to touch that little line in the middle and it will not work. What's going to happen, and I'll show you, if you don't have this show here, watch, I'm just going to spawn just one Avery just to show you. Avery's just going to walk straight. That's it. She's never going to follow the path. She's just going to walk straight along the ground until she walks off the edge of the screen there. All right? But if I have the show there, then now it can see it. All right, it can actually see what we're supposed to be doing. This has to go here. So the black line can now see it and touch it, and now it will follow the path again. So I'm going to show you guys what that looks like. I'm just going to do this. Actually, I spawned an extra one, so there should be 5 this round. Okay, so now Avery is now following the path again. All right. And again, she's going to change direction. So again, only the very last one is actually showing that it's updating, but they are all updating. I promise you that they are. If they weren't, then Avery would not be following the ball, because Avery is set to follow these positions. She doesn't do anything else but follow these positions. All right. So I know it's working. It's just for whatever reason, it does not update here. And I'm not exactly sure why. I've never been able to figure it out. All right. And it's not a big deal as long as I know that it works. And it does. All right. So that's that in a nutshell. Now we're going to continue. So if it is not touching the gate sprite, then I want it to do all this. But what happens when it finally does touch the gate sprite? Let's say the towers do not defeat it, okay? If the towers do not defeat it, sooner or later it will make it to the gate sprite. And if it does, I want you right away to change the castle health by 20. You can change this to whatever you want. I'm saying 20 for now. It's probably going to change, but for now, that's what I have it set to, just to know that it works. Okay. Then I want you to replace item clone's number of distance with 0. All right. Distance, again, I'm not using it. So to me, right at the moment, this does absolutely nothing, but it will in a future update. Replace clone's number of clone X with 300. Why do you guys think I put that there, though? That's interesting, eh? And again, only the very last one changed to 300, but all of them did. I promise you they did, because I know what my code does and I know why I set this there. I could have chosen any number. You could put 0, but here's the problem. At some point along this path, X is going to be equal to 0. All right. And in my code, I have it in this Avery walking code that if ever her code gets to a specific number of clone X, like 0, let's say, if I had 0, then she would be deleted. That's how I delete her from my game. All right. Otherwise, she would just stay there. All right. But I have to be able to delete her somehow. So how I did it was whenever that this is at 300, so whenever it touches the gate or gets killed, and I have that code in the gets killed, and I'm going to show you that in a second. It'll switch this to 300, and as soon as Avery sees that it's 300, she destroys herself. That's how I take care of that code. Then after all this, wait 0.1 second and delete this clone. All right? So now we're going to go just up here a little bit so I can show you. This is if you were getting attacked by a tower, okay? So if at any point your HP of any of these clones is below 1, meaning 0 or negatives, all right, then I want you to change the spawn amount by 1, which was in this code, remember. So wait until spawn amount is back down to 0. That's how that's being affected. And I also want you to replace item clones of clone X with 300. Again, that's the same code that's going to tell Avery, destroy yourself, either by getting destroyed by a cannon or a tower, or getting destroyed by hitting the gate itself. Then after that, delete the clone and it's gone. All right, that is my code. Other than that, I have pause and I have unpause. Okay, that's going to be in effect later. I do not have that set up yet. Okay. But that is all the code that I have right at the moment. All right. There's only one other thing that I do want to say. So if pause is equal to 0 and clone check is yes, then do all this. But if pause is 1, I want you to do nothing at all. All right. And that's where this will come into effect. All right. Until pause is back to 0, then you can continue moving. Otherwise, they're just going to stay still. They should just stay still when that happens. Okay, so now let's go over the Avery code, which is basically the same code as the enemy, all right? But we will go over it right quickly here so you guys can see it, okay? So when the green flag is clicked, again, set the size, the updater, all these are specific to the clone, all right? They're not global variables. They're for this sprite only. So that's why they're called the same, which is a smart thing to do, okay? They do the exact same thing, all right, as in the other one. Just going to get rid of that. It's just floating around. Then for this one here, when you start as a clone, you're going to set your rotation style left to right. So that means when Avery is pointing in the other direction, her graphic will turn and look the complete opposite side, which gives that effect that she's turning, okay? Then I want you to set the clone checker to yes, which is to show that yes, this is a clone. If pause check is equal to 0, then you can move. And if clone checker is yes, then you can continue, okay? And all that I'm going to do at this point is point in the direction of this. So if this is clone number 1 of Avery, well, I want you to follow the direction of the first clone because that's the one you're going to be glued to, all right? It's going to be glued to the first clone, and that's in the other part of my code right here, okay? The moving one, and I'm going to show you that in a second. I want you to point in the direction of the first clone here. This first clone information is this, it's 90, meaning I want you to also look in that direction. Wait 0.2 seconds, switch to your next costume, go to front layer, show, next costume, blah, 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 blah. That's the animation sequence. That's how I animate Avery. Because if you didn't put a 0.2 seconds, it's way too fast, it looks stupid. Animation should never be that quick, all right? Unless you have 50 different animation pictures to scroll through. Right now I only have 4, so if I didn't wait, it would look horrible, the walking graphics. And if I put this 0.2 seconds here, which some people would think maybe that's how they would animate it, it wouldn't work because it has to be able to touch this middle thing every time that it refreshes forever. It has to be instant. It can't wait 0.2 seconds to do it. And then that's 0.2 seconds every time you change Avery's frame. So that'd be way too much, and it would not work. The ball would be way off. It would fall off path almost immediately, and it would not work. So that's why I had to do it this way. That was my get around for this, all right? Now that's the showing of the graphics and the animation of Avery and the direction that she points, okay? Now her movement. So when she starts as clone, as long as the game is not paused and the clone checker is yes, meaning it is a clone, then I just forever want you to move with hit, all right? What that means is move with the hit box. I want you to move with the hitbox. It's just a block that I created, and it's a block that refreshes instantly, all right? You don't have to put a block like this, but I did. I could have just taken this out, to be honest, and put it in there, and it would probably work just fine. But I'm just doing this to show you that you can make your own block, all right? Then all that's going to happen forever is go to X item clone number. So if this is clone number 1 of Avery, it wants to go to clone number 1 of the ball as well. It wants to follow this number 1 code for X and number 1 code for Y. And it's going to follow it forever. All right. It's going to, because this isn't a forever loop, this is going to also be doing its thing forever. And then if at any point in time, clone number, so the position here is 300, what happens? You delete the clone. So there's my code to destroy Avery if at any point in time this ends up being 300. All right. So that's that part. So when I receive spawn, also, Avery has to set off this thing as well. So whenever this receives spawn from the spawn code, this Avery also receives the same spawn, okay? When I receive spawn, I want it to unpause just in case for whatever reason you decided to pause the game, all right? Unpause. Then when I receive pause, stop other scripts in this sprite. So it's going to stop Avery because she has to stop doing her thing if the ball stopped. If the ball stopped, I don't want her animating. I don't want her doing anything. I want her to stay still. And I'm going to set it up though that she will be able to start again later. It's just at this point, I haven't put that, I don't think I have that code in, but I have started the code. I've started working on it, and then I've decided I was going to create this video and show you guys, all right? Then when I receive spawn, If the updater is bigger than 20, this is the same as in the enemy code, okay? Then you're going to, this is how you're going to update the clone number, etc., etc., etc. And if the clone checker is no, meaning this is the original Avery, who's hidden wherever she might be hidden, she's up here, okay? Then create a clone of myself, and when you become a clone, well, right away you're going to go to the location of where you're supposed to go. So you're not going to stay here, you're going to go, you're just going to, it'll look like you spawned right here, and you're going to walk with the ball. You're going to follow that ball all the way around, and basically that's it in a nutshell, guys. I hope that this made sense to you guys. If you have questions, do not be afraid to put them in the comments below. I will try and get to them. All right, just in case there's some part of this that you did not get, I will try and explain it to you better. All right, and this is everything I have up to now in my game. And it does work. You guys can click on the link that I will have in the description below to go try it for yourselves. If you guys want to work on it yourselves, if you want to make your own game out of this, you do your thing. All right. It's going to be shared in Scratch and available for anybody to use. All right. If you don't mind hitting that like and subscribe button down below, that would be very much appreciated by me. And hopefully I'll see you in the next episode. Thanks now.